the moment. When did Allah open my heart? It is when they made sujood. When they made sujood, and I saw them call the adhan, wash themselves, recite. That's it. I said, Omar, I have to become a Muslim today, and you are just going to have to. I don't know if there's any other white Muslims on the planet, but today you're going to make an exception for me. I'm not leaving here except if you teach me how to be a Muslim. I will become a Muslim today. I didn't know that there was.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat datang di channel Semesta Inspirasi, tempat kita berbagi kisah-kisah kehidupan yang penuh dengan makna. Jangan lupa untuk like, subscribe, dan aktifkan lonceng notifikasi agar tidak ketinggalan kisah-kisah inspiratif lainnya. Hari ini kita akan menyaksikan sebuah perjalanan hidup yang luar biasa dari seorang pria yang lahir dalam keluarga Kristen Evangelis, terjerumus dalam kehidupan kriminal, namun akhirnya menemukan hidayah Islam di dalam penjara. Kisah ini menunjukkan bahwa tidak ada yang mustahil bagi Allah untuk mengubah hidup seseorang. Maliki Clique lahir di Oklahoma, Amerika Serikat, dalam keluarga Kristen Evangelis yang sangat taat. Ayahnya adalah seorang Kristen Evangelis yang taat, sementara ibunya juga sangat mendalami agama mereka. Sejak kecil Maliki dididik dalam lingkungan yang sangat menjunjung tinggi nilai-nilai Kristen, dan ia ikut terlibat dalam berbagai kegiatan gereja. Namun, meskipun dibesarkan dalam keluarga yang sangat taat, Maliki mulai merasa ada kekosongan dalam ajaran agama yang ia terima. Kepercayaan terhadap agama yang diajarkan ayahnya mulai goyah saat ia memasuki usia remaja. Ia merasa banyak pertanyaan dalam dirinya yang tidak bisa terjawab dengan ajaran yang ada.
He told me that he had given his life to Christ. And that's something that I never heard in my life. What do you mean giving your life to Christ? And he started talking about the blood of Jesus, and I'm saved, and this, and I'm 7 years old. I'm a 7-year-old boy thinking, what is he talking about? And so my father was like, let me show you what I'm talking about. So we went to the church, and even before we got inside of the church, we were right outside of the door, and I heard screaming and yelling and music and crying. I actually ran out of the church. I said, this is scaring me. There's no way I can be a part of this. So my father chased after me. No, this is, and he kind of broke it down to me what they're doing. But me as a 7-year-old, I never understood it. I always believed in God since day one. I had never had a moment in my life of, what if there was never a God? I've never had that problem in my heart. I'm reading the Bible, and I'm reading a particular verse about Jacob, where Jacob says, the first verse that I read was, no man can see God and live after that. And I'm thinking, but people called Jesus God, and they all saw Jesus, and no one died looking at Jesus. So the verse was, no man can look at God and live after. I turned the page to another verse, another story of Jacob. Not only does Jacob see God, he is wrestling God. He has in a wrestling match, has God by the thigh and says to God, I will not let you go until you bless me. Okay, wait a minute. You just said that if you even see God, that no man can live after that. Okay, so why is Jacob living after that? And why does God have a form that you can hold on to? And why can't God, being all-powerful, pull away from Jacob? The story goes on. So what did I do? 14-year-old me raised my hand. The pastor came over and said, how can I help you? I showed him the 2 verses, and his reaction was, I didn't even know that was in the Bible. And I said, what? But you're the Bible pastor. You're the one that's supposed to be teaching us the Bible. And as a 14-year-old boy, I asked him, how do I rectify this? How do I make sense of this? How do I live and believe as a Christian after reading this contradiction?
Karena perasaan kecewa dan kebingungan tersebut, Maliki mulai terjerumus ke dalam dunia kriminal. Ia terlibat dalam berbagai kegiatan ilegal, termasuk perampokan dan kekerasan. Pada usia muda, ia sudah menjalani kehidupan yang penuh dengan resiko dan ketegangan, jauh dari ajaran agama yang dulu ia anut. Namun, hidupnya mulai berubah ketika ia akhirnya ditangkap dan dijatuhi hukuman penjara. Di dalam penjara ia merasa kesepian dan bingung, tetapi justru disinilah titik balik besar dalam hidupnya dimulai.
A group of bad people. I was just wandering aimlessly. I had no moral compass because no religion could, or Christianity in particular, could not prove itself. So I just held on to that. I guess you could call it monotheism, without direction, without a compass. That's how I existed. So I got around these people, and I was 19 years old, and one night we were doing things that we were not supposed to be doing, and one of my so-called friends said, I know a place that we can rob. So everybody get their pistols and let's go. Now, the important thing to remember here is I had a job, I had money in my account, I didn't need to steal, but there was something missing in my life. There was no God in my life, there was no structure in my life is what I want to say. And I did it. If somebody asked me, why did you do the robbery, the armed robbery? I'll tell you, excitement, because I was empty. There was nothing in me. I had nobody telling me. There was no consequences. There was no belief. I was barely hanging on. And so we did the robbery, and 24 hours later we were arrested. I had never been arrested or spent a day in jail my whole life.
Di penjara, Maliki bertemu dengan seorang muslim yang memperkenalkan Islam kepadanya. Teman barunya itu tidak hanya mengajaknya berbicara tentang Islam, tetapi juga memberinya Al-Quran.
Sent me to the gladiator school, the worst maximum security prison in the state of Washington. The name of that prison was Walla Walla. So the day that I got into Walla Walla, I was scared. I was 19 years old. I had never been to jail in my life. I didn't know the jail culture. I was lost. There's Supermax and then there's maximum security right underneath that. The Supermax is for terrorists and, serial killers and stuff like that. So they put me in maximum security prison in Walla Walla. So the first day I got to prison, the White Aryan Brotherhood, that's a prison gang, came up to me and said, "Well, you look white to me. Are you full white?" And I said, me, maybe I had one or two white friends. Most of them were Filipino or black or Hispanic. That question was strange to me, but I answered, yeah, I'm full white, sure. He said, okay. And so he had 3 other guys with him, and he took my blankets and my towels and carried everything for me to my cell and made an announcement as we walked down the tier. He's with us. There's a new white guy going down. This guy's with us. Okay, to let the other people know. So I carried on 7, 8 months. I'm walking the yard by myself, which is a very dangerous thing to do. Kept on walking for weeks this happened. I noticed the guy always looking at me. He appeared to be a white guy. He had a long mustache. He appeared to be white, but he was sitting with black people. He would always look at me, and I seriously thought that he had a problem with me. I seriously thought that we were gonna have problems. So one day, I'm walking around the track, and that same person stands up off of the tables in the yard, looking at me the whole time. He's got about 5 African-American people with him, behind him, and he's walking straight towards me. And I'm like, okay, here we go. This is how it happens. I'm gonna get jumped. They got a problem with me, and I've always promised my mother, so they went straight for me, all the way until they got about 10 yards from me. And finally, I just turned, and I squared up, because I knew it was gonna happen. The guy says, whoa, no, nothing like that. Assalamu alaikum. And I said, what? And he looked behind him, and he finally, okay, this doesn't look good. I have people behind me, muscle-bound men behind me, and we're just charging one man. And he said, I'd just like to talk to you for a minute. And I said, well, as long as it's with you alone, yeah. And he said, my bad. That looks wrong, and we approached you wrong. We apologize. That's our bad. And so we walked the track together, and I learned that his name was Omar, and that he was from Turkey. And so, okay, you're the first person that I've met from Turkey. And he said, what do you know about Islam? And I had absolutely no clue what that word is. And I even told him, Islam, how do you say that in English? He said, Islam is a religion. I said, oh, I didn't know that. He made dawah to me about what Islam was, and we talked and we talked and we talked. And finally, one day, he brought a book, and it was wrapped up in a towel. And he said, kind of sternly, he said, look, man, I'm going to give you a book, but you have to make sure that you keep it clean and you don't disrespect it. You don't put it on the ground, okay? Do I have your word? Because I'm going to give you a book. I said, sure, Omar. What's the book? And he uncovered it, and it was a blue Quran with gold writing. And he said, this is a gift from me to you. This is now your Quran. And I wrapped it up, and I said, well, thank you, Omar. Thank you so much. I went back to my cell, and I opened this book. And the first thing that I did is I went to the index, and I looked for names. Moses, Jesus appeared, Abraham, Isaac, Joseph, Jacob, all of these. And my first intuition was, oh, God. It's just like the Bible. And if it's just like the Bible, it's not true. It's gonna have these contradictions. It's the same people. Oh man, what Omar was saying was good. And now, I don't know. So I opened the Quran and I read the story. The first chapter that I opened up was Ar-Rahman. And I read it, and the language, the delivery of the Quran was so unique to me. And I just thought, the way this book is worded is amazing. And so I read the Quran, and so the third day, I really got into the Quran. I was committed to reading it for hours. And so what happened was, my cellmate said, hey man, aren't you going to dinner? I said, dinner? And I was looking for my Quran. I said, dinner? And he said, yeah, you've been reading that book since breakfast. Are you going to eat or no? I said, yeah, I probably should. I closed the Quran, and I went, and I just thought, wow, I'm really into this book. Why? This is not Christianity, but it's saying kind of the same thing. It's going on.
Maliki mulai membaca Al-Quran dengan penuh perhatian dan menemukan kedamaian serta ketenangan dalam setiap ayatnya. Salah satu ayat yang sangat menyentuh hatinya adalah surat Ar-Rahman yang menegaskan kasih sayang Allah kepada seluruh umat manusia itu adalah saat di mana hatinya benar-benar terbuka untuk menerima Islam.
As a Christian, my first time to Jummah was as a Christian, not a Muslim. And so here I am, a white guy, surrounded with black people, and one Turkish guy who had been making dawah to me for months. And the first thing that I experienced in Jummah was the adhan. And the first time that I heard the adhan, it hit me. It hit my heart. And I turned to Omar and I said, Omar, what is this beautiful song that this man is singing? And he said, not a song, it's the call to prayer. And so he basically translated what he said, and I was just like, so beautiful. so beautiful. He said, hey, let me show you about what we do. We're going to make wudu. So he taught me how to make wudu. And I made wudu as a Christian. Just get the whole experience, right? So I made wudu as a Christian, as a mushrik. And I sat down with Omar. And so we listened to the khutbah, and it came time for us to pray. And so Omar said, listen, sit over to the side. We're going to pray. And I said, wait a minute, I have some questions. When you guys pray, you said that the imam stays in the front and he reads the Quran. Does he read from the book? Does he face you and he reads to the book, reads to the people? He said, no, this imam has memorized the Quran, all of it. And I said, Omar, that book, like this thick that you gave me, he's memorized the whole thing? He said, yeah, and millions of people, Muslims, have memorized it from 7 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, women, men, everybody. And I just thought, whoa. And everything went through my mind. These people are different. They are calling us to the prayer in a beautiful melodic voice. These people have washed their hands, their elbow, their arms, their face, their feet before they worship God. We never did that. How come we didn't do that as Christians? How come we didn't have why did we have guitars and drums and singing inside of the church? Why couldn't we have this? This is beautiful. And it always felt organic to me, normal. As a matter of fact, as a Christian attending Jummah, I felt so at home while not being a Muslim at the same time. And so Omar said, listen, okay, stand over here or sit over here. We're going to line up in rows and we're going to pray and then we'll talk after. If you have any questions, you can do that. I said, perfect.
Pada tahun 1991, Maliki dengan penuh keyakinan mengucapkan 2 kalimat syahadat dan memutuskan untuk memeluk agama Islam. Ia mengganti namanya menjadi Ali sebagai nama muslimnya. Keputusan ini adalah titik awal perubahan besar dalam hidupnya. Ia merasa bahwa ia telah menemukan jalan yang selama ini ia cari.
Easy, I'll tell you. With all of this known that I mentioned before, the adhan, the memorizing of the Quran, all of these things, the thing that impressed me the most, the thing that switched my heart, I got up from my place. I probably shouldn't have. He told me to stay there, but I was there for the experience. I wanted everything. And so what I did was I went to the front row and I did this. I looked down the first row of the prayer because I wanted to see if it was real. Is it real with these people? How do they look when they worship? And I saw muscle-bound men, huge men, but when they were in front of their creator, they became humble and all of that hardness was gone. Eyes were lowered in complete humility to their creator. And I stood there like this and looked at them and I said, whoa. But again, if anybody wants to know the moment, when did Allah open my heart? It is when they made sujood. When they made sujood and I saw them call the adhan, wash themselves, recite the Holy Quran, become humble, and then put their face on the ground. That was it. That was it. That was the moment where I said, these people are not normal. And I have never in my life seen worship of God until now, today. They have done everything from, like I said, the adhan, wudu, reciting the Quran, and then they're worshiping. That's it. I said, Omar, I have to become a Muslim today, and you are just going to have to. I don't know if there's any other white Muslims on the planet, but today you're going to make an exception for me. I'm not leaving here except if you teach me how to be a Muslim. I will become a Muslim today. I didn't know that there was other white Muslims on the planet. I thought it was for, because all I saw was black people and one Turkish guy. I didn't know Islam at all. And he himself put his head down and began to cry, Omar. And he said, Subhanallah, Subhanallah. Of course you can become a Muslim. And so on that day, Jummah, 1991, I said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. And I was a Muslim.
Namun, setelah memeluk Islam, Maliki menghadapi tantangan besar, penolakan dari keluarganya. Ayahnya yang seorang Kristen Evangelis sangat kecewa dan marah dengan keputusan Maliki untuk memeluk Islam. Meskipun demikian, Maliki tetap teguh dengan pilihannya. Ia berkomitmen untuk menjalani hidup sesuai dengan ajaran Islam, meskipun harus menghadapi kesulitan dengan keluarganya.
This is why I'm supposed to be alive, to be a Muslim. I called my father, like I always did in prison, and I told him that I had become a Muslim. And my father, remember, he's super Christian and super strict. He said, "You did what?" And I said, "I have become Muslim." "You worship the moon god?" And I don't worship a moon god or the moon, or I worship one God, the God of Jesus, the God of Moses and Abraham. And he said, "No, you don't. No, you've listen, you're on this Islam." And he said an explicitive, and he told me, "Give an ultimatum." He said, "Look, your 6-figure income, your 6-figure inheritance, that's going to be gone. The things that you're going to inherit after me, gone. My family is in the petroleum industry, so very well off." And I said, "You're going to disown me?" He said, "After today, if you insist upon this Islam religion, you are dead to me. All your inheritance gone." And he said, "Son, don't test me. I will go to my lawyer tomorrow and have him change the will, and you will be completely penniless. You will have no income whatsoever, nothing from me. You will be dead to me, dead to your brothers and your sister. You're done. So choose the words that you say very carefully. Now, will you leave Islam or will you stay in this fake religion? And I said, before I answer that, let me tell you something. I will obey you in everything except this one thing. And he said, why? Before you're dead to me, explain to me why. And I said, Dad, I have to make my own decision. There's something more than a six-figure inheritance. There's something more than inheriting property. There's something more after this life. And I don't care about this life. So when it comes to matters of salvation, you can keep your money. Give it to my brothers, my sister. Give it to charity. I don't care. I have to insist that I become a Muslim and remain a Muslim. And here I am, 32 years later, a Muslim. Alhamdulillah. So
setelah bebas dari penjara, Maliki menjadi aktif dalam dakwah dan berbagi kisah perubahannya kepada orang lain. Ia mulai berbicara di berbagai kesempatan dan menggunakan platform media sosial untuk menyebarkan pesan damai Islam. Maliki berusaha menjadi teladan bagi orang-orang yang mungkin merasa terjebak dalam kehidupan yang gelap dan mengajarkan bahwa perubahan itu mungkin bagi siapa saja. Kisah hidup Maliki Clique adalah bukti bahwa hidayah Allah bisa datang kepada siapa saja, kapan saja, dan dalam cara yang tak terduga. Tidak ada yang terlambat untuk berubah. Bahkan dalam kehidupan yang penuh dengan kesalahan dan penyesalan, Allah selalu memberi kesempatan untuk memulai yang baru. Semoga kisah ini menginspirasi kita semua untuk terus mencari kebenaran dan menjalani hidup dengan penuh ikhlas dan tawakal. Terima kasih telah menyaksikan video ini. Jangan lupa untuk like, komen, dan subscribe. Bagikan kisah ini agar lebih banyak orang yang terinspirasi oleh perjalanan hidup Maliki Clique. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Slave of Allah. If I have Islam, I have everything. If I don't have Islam and I have all the material things in the world, I have nothing and I am nothing.